Liberals and some on the left are celebrating Facebook and Twitter banning Donald Trump and some of his supporters. Sure, it's nice he can't tweet crazy shit anymore, but why now, after 4 years of his lies and threats, is this happening? What's the point of doing this at the end of his term? And what are the consequences for the rest of us? If our unelected tech overlords can shut down the accounts of a sitting US president, doesn't it mean they're actually the ones in charge? Who's making these decisions, and what's the criteria, and to whom are they accountable? We don't know. Even European leaders like Angela Merkel, the standard for liberal leadership in the West, plus the EU commissioner and at least 2 French ministers condemned Trump's banning as dangerous overreach by tech giants. And they're no friends of Trump or the right. It's not like they even censored one of his craziest tweets. They banned him for tweeting a refusal to attend Biden's inauguration. Threatening war crimes against countries is fine, but RSVPing no to Biden's inauguration crossed a red line? Of course, this happened following a collection of right-wing extremists storming the Capitol due to Trump-fueled delusions of a coup. But as with 9/11, those in power are taking advantage of the emotional aftermath of that frightening spectacle to tighten their grip on speech. Their argument is that these people are spreading disinformation and creating more polarization and right-wing extremism on social media. But these rioters openly planned their insurrection on social media for all to see. Not only were the authorities unprepared, there seems to have been some police collaboration. They've known for years that right-wing extremists are a growing threat, and they've repeatedly ignored and downplayed it, choosing instead to focus obsessively on Islamic extremism, even when Obama was in charge. And under Trump, black identity extremists, which isn't a thing. Now, all of a sudden, they're acting surprised and exploiting the opportunity to censor. But banning these right-wingers from social media will merely radicalize them further, feeding their sense of persecution and pushing them underground, where their dangerous activity will be more difficult to monitor. When Alex Jones was censored, most people cheered, including some on the left. But did that reduce polarization and extremism? No, because the underlying problem isn't social media. It's a dangerous mix of growing inequality and pauperization, weak media literacy, well-funded right-wing media machines like Fox News and talk radio fueling hate for profit and politics, liberal refusal to contend with the economic inequality they participated in worsening, and the weakness of the left. What this censorship is really about is the ruling elite's desperate attempt to maintain the status quo at a time when there's record disdain for it. People hate the establishment. They recognize that something is deeply wrong with the structure of our society. Sadly, the left doesn't have the same platforms and funding as the right, so much of that angst gets sucked into the right and crazy conspiracies. That's how we got Trump. Instead of dealing with the root, liberal elites are looking to narrative control through censorship to prevent people from challenging them and the unequal, violent system they uphold. A system that empowers and enriches the few at the expense of everyone else left to fight for crumbs. They're exploiting a political crisis to get you to cheer for censorship, but the lines of what constitutes bad speech are deliberately blurred, making it easy to use the sweeping support for censorship against the left. After all, social media censorship isn't new. For every banned right-wing nutjob, there are many more censored left-wingers. Long before Trump was banned, many Palestinian journalists and activists suffered the same fate for challenging and exposing Israeli criminality. And we've seen the censorship of left-wing accounts, like Facebook's removal of the anti-media for exposing police brutality, or Twitter's removal of Red Scare, a popular left-wing podcast, the removal of images of George Floyd, outlets like Soapbox and Jacobin having videos removed for covering the elections in Bolivia following the US-backed coup against Evo Morales, the removal of accounts of people from Iran, Venezuela, and Syria, all countries on the US State Department's regime change hit list. This isn't an accident. Silicon Valley works hand in hand with the US government through think tanks that advise the corporations on whom to censor. These think tanks include the Atlantic Council, which is funded by weapons companies, oil companies, banks, Gulf monarchies, the State Department, and NATO. And there's a reason anti-war voices keep getting taken down. US government-backed think tanks are lobbying for these double standards. They even push for social media companies to add a false label warning to us at Soapbox to scare you off from anti-war content that questions capitalism. Just because they wear jeans and t-shirts and like yoga and skateboards and support the Democratic Party does not make Silicon Valley oligarchs our friends. Billionaires never have our interests at heart. They want monopolies. It's the nature of capitalism. You cannot trust these tech giants and their partners in the US surveillance state to use these speech-regulating powers for good. The irony is, of course, that these people support right-wing extremists in countries the US doesn't like. In Venezuela, Syria, Ukraine, Bolivia, while shutting down leftists at home in the name of fighting fascism. What a joke. The internet was designed by the Pentagon to be an information war weapon after all. Yasha Levine wrote a whole book about it. And what about the argument? Go start your own social media company. These are private businesses. They don't have to host you. Well, these Silicon Valley giants are monopolies. They control the forums we use to communicate. Even the Democrats say so. A Democratic-controlled subcommittee recently issued a report about it, concluding that Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple are in fact monopolies, making competition impossible. In fact, all the horror over right-wingers at Parler might be more about big tech monopolies shutting down a competitor. Come on, it's not like they don't have right-wingers saying crazy shit on their platforms too. In the meantime, the wealth gap grows larger, the billionaires get richer, the corporate media keeps us divided, while Democrats can claim victory by giving Daddy Zuck, Jack, and the rest of the Silicon Valley oligarchs the power to ban speech. I mean, protect us from subversive ideas. Governments and corporations have an interest in seizing upon moments when we're shocked and distracted, like September 11th, the COVID crisis, Trump's hooligans rampaging through Congress, to curtail our freedoms bit by bit and establish new precedents that can't be overturned and become the new normal. First, they came for opponents of World War I. Then for communists, then for civil rights activists, then for Muslims, then for leftists, and now for the right. Soon we'll only be able to watch people lip-syncing and dancing on TikTok as all ideas are banned. And we're herded like sheep into shopping malls and spend all day shopping ourselves into a stupor on Amazon. They want to turn us into depoliticized consumers like the citizens of the UAE. Liberals who condemned Bush's abuses abandoned their high-minded principles. They switched to calling for censorship of Republicans and support police brutality against the right faster than you can say Black Lives Matter. So stop worrying about politics, get the new iPhone, and see you at the virtual shopping mall.